This is actually Moon Knight Annual #1. And the reason why I'm featuring it tonight on All Hallows Eve is because this is Beware Werewolf by Night. And that's right, we get a cameo from Jack Russell himself. Now, if you're just now hearing about it, or that sounds kind of familiar to you, you can actually watch Werewolf by Night right now on Disney Plus. And I would say, of all the Phase 4 media that they've put out that you can consume, Werewolf by Night gets a gold star from me. Like, it is wonderful, it is refreshing, it's more of what I hoped Phase 4 would be. Either way, here's the looking forward to the future and them now understanding the direction they need to go in, because you'll be getting a lot of one-shots soon for the X-Men. Anyway, this book features our favorite Jack Russell, Werewolf by Night, and Moon Knight. And what has happened is that werewolves have abducted Moon Knight's daughter. And her name is Beatrice, which is... It's an interesting name. I'm used to Beatrice, but Beatrice, I kind of like that. The book is not bad. It is the first annual, but it does directly tie into the main comic. I know in the past, every time you hear annual, I was like, oh man, this is a useless book. No, this is kind of like fleshing out some things along the way. And it's really interesting because werewolves, like, if you know the lore and the mystique around werewolves, like, what causes their transformation?
The moon.
Moon Knight.
I hate you.
I love you.
You got the spirit. Yes, their transformation is a blood curse bound by the moon.
Okay.
And Moon Knight happens to serve Khonshu, who is the god of
the moon.
Yes. So they have kidnapped his daughter in order to lure Moon Knight out because they need to sacrifice him in order to create a weapon that will kill the moon god and free them from the curse. And Jack Russell, he's come a long way. He's no longer on his own. He is now the king of wolves, and he leads his own pack. And like, if you never read like classic Werewolf by Night, he's a badass. And
yeah.
And they like got away from horror comics over the last like 40 years. You can read, there's a big compendium now available for Werewolf by Night that covers all 40 years, including first appearance of Moon Knight. So they're kind of intrinsically linked. Moon Knight and Werewolf by Night go together like John Constantine and Swamp Thing in DC. They're just that closely tied together. And the book is really interesting because it comes down to, you know, Moon Knight trying to look after his people and Jack Russell trying to look after his. And of course, it's like these two have had their fights in the past and everything, but this here is more of a battle of wills. I'm not going to spoil too much of this book for you because I feel like if you're looking for a good place to jump in, this is actually a good one because it kind of starts you off on a clean slate. It's an annual. So annuals are always a good spot to jump in if you're already in the middle of the story and you don't know what's going on. An annual kind of eases you back into that world and familiarizes you with everything. Either way, this is a good annual. This is up there with that X-Men Cyclops annual that happened. That was the run before Jonathan Hickman. But either way, it was a really good book because normally annuals didn't tie into the main story. Nowadays they do because like it makes no sense to just make a completely unrelated book of the same name. That takes us to our second book and our last book of the evening, and that is Creepshow. Now, why is it the last book? Well, that's because Creepshow, as you know, is broken up into two different stories, and I love some Creepshow. First and foremost, the nostalgic cover, it hits me right in my nostalgia spot every time I see it.
Oh, it's a big spot too.
Oh yeah, it's a huge gaping chasm. The first story is the Gomorrah tree, in which a tree in this young girl's backyard seems to have a way of poisoning everyone around it, and her family becomes increasingly abusive to each other, and she threatens to kill like her friend's mother, but it wasn't her, it was the tree. Anyway, she is blamed for hurting her neighbor's son, even though she didn't do it. Like, it was the tree that was influencing things. It pretty much ends with her like hearing the tree speak from her parents' room that the Gomorrah tree loves you. She's like, no, the Gomorrah tree loves only me, and she burns the house down with her parents and her neighbors trapped inside. And
Nice.
that is classic
Yes.
Creep Show goodness.
Yes,
Oh,
it
fucking love it. The next story is actually one that is near and dear to my heart, and it's called Creators' Rights.
Oh.
And going by that name, it is what happens to those who create something. And it's a story that I take quite personally because I've seen it happen to quite a few of my favorite creators, where they put something in the world and they still view it as their baby. But the thing is that when you're a creator and you create something and then the world embraces it, you have to accept that it is no longer yours. You're the father. However, how that character interprets and is interpreted by and touches other people, that is their version of that character. Do you think that Spider-Man as he exists today is the version that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko originally created?
No.
Absolutely not. Especially the early comics with Steve Ditko. It's like, I will love Steve Ditko to the day I die because he created my favorite character. At the same time, if you look at the history, Steve Ditko was a very big fan of Ayn Rand. So much so that Peter, when you first meet him, is very selfish. He's a big dick in those early Ditko.
Big dick.
Yeah, like it's a lot of Ayn Rand rhetoric. You know, like go read it, look it up. It's fucking crazy. But needless to say, it was like the version of Spider-Man we know now is mostly the version that we got from Mark Bagley, Todd McFarlane, to a lesser extent, and mostly Stan Lee stories, and of course Jack Kirby. You know, but the Creators' Rights focuses on a creator pretty much at the end of his life. He's retired and he's kind of bitter because he doesn't get the royalties from the use of his creation, and now they've started doing these shitty movies that are pale imitations of what he originally envisioned, and he's just bitter. And you know quite a few creators like that. Looking at you, Clive Barker. But
That was terrible.
I mean, he knows it's a problem. $90 for you're an author.
You're an author.
$90
You
for a
goddamn put
photograph?
words on pages.
Shut up. You're not Doug Bradley. He charges less than you. He's actual Pinhead. But anyway,
He's very kind.
Yeah, he's
like the
really-
He's a
kindest
kind
man.
guy. Yeah, he's a very kind man.
If you love Doug Bradley's voice, go watch his YouTube series. He reads classic literature on his channel.
Puts you right to sleep.
His first book was that he read on his channel was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, lovely.
I would encourage you to
It was good.
just listen and enjoy the sound of his lovely English voice, because he is pretty much everyone's horror grandpa at this point. But either way, the creator, he is bitter and he's jaded, and at this point he's a little loopy, and the creation that he envisioned still talks to him. And he's being cared for by this male nurse orderly, and his creation says we should keep an eye on this one. And of course, what does that male nurse orderly try to do? It's like the man's loaded,
Have sex
but
with him.
he doesn't know, he's forgotten. So it's like we can pretty much take him for all he's worth. And part of this kind of it hurt me, like it touched me in a way I didn't expect, because it made me think about Stan Lee in his final days, how they were trying to do him dirty. Like that it brought a little bit of a tear in my eye reading that story. But either way, the creator dies by pulling over a stack of long boxes. And if you're a comic book collector like me, those long boxes can get really fucking heavy with comic books. And he pulled the stack over and embedded a collectible into the dude's head, but he died under the stack. But he died winning that fight. And that was like very poetic to me. And I like Creepshow, it has the ability to mortify you and at the same time also touch your heart in a way you didn't expect. And Creepshow was also one of the first horror comics back in the day when the Comics Code Authority was established. They did a character, it was a sci-fi story featuring a black character, and they told them that they couldn't do that because it's still pretty much segregated back then.
Yeah.
But Creepshow was one of the first to feature a black, protagonist in one of their stories. And that's the reason why when Creepshow came back, it's like, I absolutely have to read this. So
That's fair.
But either way, Creepshow is near and dear to my heart, and particularly that second story, Creators' Rights. I felt something from it. I loved every moment of it. So if you're not reading Creepshow, I want it to stay around. It is an image book, so support it, and let's keep Creepshow going this time around. And like I said, some things are already woke without having to be woke.
Fair.
And that is the comic verse.